Greetings, everyone, and welcome November the 22nd, 2025. As you can see by the title and the thumbnail, the last 24 hours has released an absolute global tsunami. And I will back that up with facts and video for you in just a moment. Nations, world leaders, former military leaders are reacting as Trump's 28-point capitulation Ukrainian peace plan is beginning to show cracks. And even Trump himself, about 30 minutes ago, as I'm recording this, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, backed up on his aggressiveness. This is unbelievable, to be quite honest, that global geopolitics are operating at this level. So in this update, I'm going to show you all video, everything translated, and you, over the next 10, 12 minutes, will have a complete understanding of why I'm calling it a global tsunami. And yes, it is good. And at the end, I'm actually going to drop a Solovyov, a propagandist Russian video that explains why this must not happen. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Let's jump straight to it. Now, we have to set the scene first. And I know the first video I'm going to show you, many of you have already seen, but the scene must be laid and understood as we go forward to what has transpired since this moment. So let's start here. This was yesterday.
I wanted to ask you also about this Ukraine plan. President Zelensky said today that his country would risk either giving up a partner or giving up its dignity. There's been criticism that this deal...
You mean he doesn't like it?
It's unclear. He was sort of...
Well, he'll have to like it, and if he doesn't like it, then, they should just keep fighting, I guess,
The suggestion that he made, though, was that if he doesn't accept it, that the U.S. would pull back its support for Ukraine.
Well, at some point he's going to have to accept something. He hasn't accepted. You remember right in the Oval Office not so long ago, I said, you don't have the cards. Don't forget, I inherited this war. This war never would have happened. I inherited this war. And I thought he should have made a deal a year ago, 2 years ago.
Okay, I remind you that 2 years ago, Donald Trump was not president, not even 1 year ago. 1 year ago, he was saying that he could stop the war in 24 hours. Now, in addition to that, Donald Trump also just reversed on that in a statement as he was heading out to, I think, Air Force, to the helicopter, heading somewhere. I'm not really sure, but he was outside. And I will play that for you in just one moment. But I remind you, before we go any further, you do not have any cards. Immediately after that, basically within weeks, there was Operation Spiderweb that showed Ukraine has lots of cards and they are defending their territory. I remind you also that the front lines of Ukraine have not really moved. Yes, we've lost some towns, lost some cities, and there are tough battles, but you were talking about defending a sovereign nation. So Ukraine does have cards. In fact, today, world leaders dropping all of their aces out, and you're going to see them all. The biggest ace, not played by Zelensky today, but played by the Verkhovna Rada. But before we get to that, this was Trump just minutes ago.
Ukraine plan problematic? Is this your final offer to Ukraine?
No, not my final.
Okay, sorry to be emotional, but I can't help it. So yesterday, he's going to have to like it. There's no other options for him. Well, today, is this your final offer? No, it's not the final offer. I remind you, it was the same president who also just literally a couple of months ago tweeted out that Ukraine actually could win the war and take Russian territory. It's absolute geopolitical global destabilization and chaos, and that is why I call the last 24 hours a global tsunami, and the United States is going to have to respond to it. So let's get into the tsunami, guys. The first piece is the Verkhovna Rada dropping a truth bomb on Ukrainian news today. We really do understand how this process is unfolding, and no, we do not agree to what is being forced upon us. Verkhovna Rada, here you go. I actually do not understand why the United States requires the president to sign these documents. In fact, most of these points on this plan are not the authority of the president, but the authority of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. And if the United States wants this agreement to be legal after all and to be recognized by the world, well, then it is not necessary to turn only to the president. It is necessary to turn also to the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. We have a parliamentary presidential government. Therefore, I do not understand what they want from the president. What signing of this agreement? What did they want from him? And as for most of the points, this is from the direct authority of the Rada. Sergey, does the Rada agree to these things? No. Our group does not agree to any of this. The parliament is not ready to make concessions that the United States wants for the Russian Federation today. Man, you know what we got to do on that? We've got to do that. Ukraine is not going to capitulate. So there you have another piece to the puzzle. This was an ace, guys, because he's coming out talking as a representative of the Rada. Listen, we have a parliamentary presidential government. We have to work on these things together. Territorial concessions cannot be signed away by the president. That is the same thing that Zelensky has repeated for years. And I remind you that Russia doesn't even want to negotiate with Zelensky or Kyiv because they call them a Nazi regime. That is why we're seeing a global tsunami, and education is coming to the world. And I hope this information is helping you understand. Now, we do have a joint world leaders statement. We do have Ukrainian delegation, I think, heading to Switzerland right now for meetings. It's going to be led by Andrei Yermak, which is a different topic, and that's not for this video, but there's a delegation going there that does not include Zelensky. U.S. is listening now to these world leaders say this plan needs revision and reworking. Joint statement by the leaders of Europe, Japan, and Canada. In addition to that, Robert Fico from Slovakia just dropped a powerful statement, and you're going to hear it. But this is what the world leaders' joint statement: borders must not be changed by force, period. Meaning you can't give away the Donetsk Oblast. You can't. Do you know how much is left in the Donetsk Oblast, guys? Look at here. Let me get to a place where I can do this for you. And I'm going to tell you something interesting here that nobody's talking about. This is the remainder of the Donetsk Oblast. So this, Ukraine is supposed to just give away. In addition, I remind you that on the Constitution of Russia, in their books, they also have the territory of the Zaporizhia Oblast and additionally the Kherson Oblast. Nobody's talking about that right now. Of course, Putin's going to come back and say, well, this is our territory too. We get Kherson. We get Zaporizhia. This is why a global tsunami is happening right now, and it's a good thing. European leaders are ready to join in to ensure the sustainability of future peace. In addition, reduction of the armed forces of Ukraine and Ukraine's military capabilities is unacceptable. All provisions concerning the EU and NATO can only be implemented with the consent of their members. That is a direct statement against the 28-point peace plan, where the United States was, by an authoritarian, strong-arm, mafia, Putin-like move, forcing the European Union and NATO decisions without involving them in the talk. That's what's happening. And they said no. Listen now to Robert Fico. In this agreement, Ukraine's position is 100 times worse than it was in April 2022. And ladies and gentlemen, I want to remind, or rather I want to reiterate, that we support it within the small role that Slovakia plays in the European Union. I will support this peace agreement to the maximum extent I can. But as for the peace deal itself, it is a bombastic disaster. If this plan is signed, Russia will emerge from this war as a total winner. And of course, Russia will come out of this war greatly strengthened both morally and economically. Boom, shakalaka. That is a 100% truth bomb dropped by Fico, who is European Union supports Ukraine, but at the same time, has been friendly with some Russian activities. But what a truth bomb. That tells you a huge truth right there. Now, let's continue this. Let's look at some other people. One of the greatest friends to Ukraine, the beginning of the war, and even now, even though he is not in power, Ukrainians, President Zelensky, the Rada, they love this guy, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson coming out and saying Trump's peace plan is a complete betrayal of Ukraine. Quote, he says it is equivalent to military castration, quote, and makes Ukraine vulnerable to a new invasion. Johnson is confident that Kyiv will have to go crazy to accept the terms of this plan. Let's take it a step further. Former U.S. ambassadors Herbst and Vershbow, generals that support Ukraine, retired so strongly, like Breedlove, General Hodges, that I know many of you watch on YouTube or mainstream all the time, General Clark. Today, we urgently appeal to your generosity and compassion. Your support is crucial to our mission of advancing strategic advocacy for Ukraine. You need to hear this. I'll read it quickly. Does Washington want its peace plan signed in Yalta? Think Operation Keelhaul. According to all reports, Washington, this is their joint public letter. According to all reports, Washington has told Kyiv that Ukraine is to sign onto the mislabeled peace plan by Thanksgiving. What a tragedy in that anyway, talking about Thanksgiving and forcing a capitulation. Pure evil. In what world does a forced Ukrainian capitulation and the rewarding of a crumbling Russia for its war crimes and genocide lead to a Thanksgiving except for international thugs and terrorists? The plan, a product of Washington and Russia without Ukraine or any other impacted country, is an embarrassment at best. The United States siding with an international war criminal. They continue unprovoked. Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 and in addition to military operations has murdered, raped, and tortured the people of Ukraine ever since. It has and is abducting Ukraine's children, targeting civilians, their schools, hospitals, apartment buildings, churches, and conducting an extraordinary worldwide propaganda campaign denying and justifying its demonic behavior. Yes, the plan being pushed on Ukraine includes no provisions that require Russia to make any concessions. No, instead it would subjugate the victim and reward Russia by accepting Russian demands that would set conditions for renewed Russian aggression against Ukraine and its other European targets. If this peace plan was a proposed Hollywood script, it would be thrown in the trash as preposterous. And this plan must be rejected. And they end with the question, where is Congress? Great question, great statement from great leaders with great experience. Let's go to the next one. These guys were very detailed to speak about the atrocities against the children. Ladies and gentlemen, if this was agreed to, Ukraine capitulated, they now give up all of this land and all the people living in it, unless they somehow got out, would come underneath the Russian Federation. Do you want to know what Russia really thinks about the children? Well, listen for yourself. The war will end, and then what will take place? Aren't you aware we are liberating this territory and there are people in this territory? There will be children in this territory. Have we forgotten what it was like when Mariupol was captured and liberated from the Nazis? The children there had been brainwashed for a long time. And of course, we do not talk about it openly or loudly, but the children were seriously poisoned and they need to be treated. This is an extremely difficult task that fell on the shoulders of the Donetsk People's Republic leadership, and Denis Pushilin personally did a lot of work for this. How will this program operate on a consistent manner? Who will be responsible? And tell me, what good serious films about this war and the reality of it have been made? Have you seen any? What about TV? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking right here as you listen to that, and you heard him talk about liberation. What about the children? How are we deprogram them? Let me just show you really quickly. This is what I was pulling up. This is liberation. You can see, and I would have zoomed in for them, but no need. This is different images of just one town, Bakhmut, that was leveled to the ground. This is what he's talking about, liberation and the programming, the deprogramming of children. And we're just supposed to go and support this capitulation? No, that is why I ask you today, share this video. This paints the whole picture very well up to this point of Saturday afternoon, and it is a global tsunami, and there are cracks showing, good cracks. We will stay on this minute by minute. I'm starting to feel better. The voice is not completely there yet, but it's in process. Thank you for your care. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing. We appreciate each and every one of you.